Okay, so picture this. You're out in the Sonoran Desert, sun's beating down on you,
Yeah.
water. You can forget about it. It's like more precious than gold out there.
Yeah.
Most creatures would just shrivel up, right? But not our friend, the Sonoran Desert Tortoise.
Yeah, they're pretty amazing.
This is the amazing reptile we're going to be diving into today.
Right.
We want to figure out, like, how do they not just survive out there, but actually thrive?
Yeah.
And we've got, like, some awesome research articles here all about this desert icon, you know?
It's crazy how life just, like, figures it out, even in the toughest spots.
Yeah.
People always think deserts are empty,
Right.
but really they're, like, bursting with all these cool adaptations.
Exactly. It's not just an empty wasteland.
Right.
So that's what we're going to be uncovering today, all about, like, how these tortoises have adapted, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so first things first, the Sonoran Desert. It's hot.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, brutally hot. So how does this tortoise even deal with that kind of heat?
So they got a bunch of tricks up their shells, right?
Okay.
One is they spend a lot of time just chilling in their burrows,
Right.
but these aren't, like, just little holes in the ground. We're talking serious digs.
Oh, wow.
Like, some studies have found burrows over 10 feet deep.
10 feet.
Yeah, and that can mean a 20-degree difference compared to the surface.
Wow.
Yeah, that's huge when you're trying to beat that desert heat.
So it's like their own little AC unit down there.
Exactly, a perfectly climate-controlled bunker.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, but what about when they're not underground? I mean, even a little breeze probably doesn't help that much out there.
True. And that's where their physiology comes in, you know?
Okay.
One of the coolest things is they store water in their bladder, like a camel.
Oh.
Yep.
Wow.
So they can go ages without a sip, especially when it's super dry.
It's like they're carrying a water bottle with them. So, you know, we always think of tortoises as, like, desert tough, right?
Yeah.
Like, what about their shell and their skin?
Totally.
Like, how does that help them survive out there?
Well, the shell is obvious, right? Keeps them safe from predators. But their skin is important, too. It's thick and scaly.
Oh,
Acts like a barrier, so they don't lose water just evaporating away.
right. That makes sense. Makes sense. So it's like wearing armor.
Yeah, basically.
But, you know, it's not just the heat, right? They got to eat and find water, too.
Of course.
And, like, resources are hard to come by in the desert.
Right, totally. And their diet is super interesting because they're herbivores.
Okay.
So they mainly eat, get this, prickly pear cacti.
Prickly pear cacti. Ouch. I mean, that doesn't sound very appealing.
I know, right? Spiky.
Yeah.
But it gives them both food and water, pads, fruits, even the spines.
Wow. So they really do eat the whole thing, huh? But hold on, how does eating cacti shape the whole ecosystem?
Well, think about it. Their eating habits actually change what plants grow where.
Okay.
By munching on the cacti, they open up space for other plants to come in. They even spread seeds around as they go.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example of how one creature can, like, totally change its environment.
So they're like little gardeners, basically.
Exactly.
Huh. Never thought of it that way. But eating cacti can't be the only way they get water, right? It's like barely rains in the Sonoran Desert.
Good point. That's where their water storage really shines.
Yeah.
When it does rain, they soak up a ton, especially during monsoon season.
Okay.
Then they can use it later when it's dry again.
It's amazing, you know, how they've adapted to make the most of every single drop.
For sure.
You know, we were talking about adaptations, and I remember seeing in the outline that these tortoises are, like, slow and steady.
Yeah.
Is that just a saying, or is there, like, an actual reason they're so slow? Does it help them survive?
Definitely not just a saying. Being slow is a big part of how they save energy.
Really?
Yeah. And in the desert, where food and water are scarce, every calorie counts.
Right.
So moving slowly means they can live on less.
So it's not laziness, it's actually a strategy.
Exactly. Efficiency at its finest.
That's super cool. And that makes me think about brumation. I know it's similar to hibernation, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Hmm.
But brumation is specifically for dealing with those crazy desert temperatures.
Okay, I see.
Like when it gets super hot in the summer or even a little chilly in the winter, they go into this brumation state, slow down their metabolism and just wait it out.
Huh. Like they've mastered the art of patience.
For real.
It seems like everything about these tortoises is about efficiency and toughness, you know?
Totally. They're like the ultimate desert survivors.
And that actually brings us to their burrows again.
Oh, right.
We talked about how deep they are and how they stay cool down there, but there's more to it, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, so much more. Think of them as like little ecosystems all on their own.
Okay.
It's not just the tortoise down there. It's a whole bunch of other desert creatures, too.
Oh, wow. Like what? What kind of animals are we talking about?
All sorts. You got insects looking for shade, reptiles trying to beat the heat,
Okay.
even little mammals using them to nest or raise their young.
So the tortoise is like an accidental landlord.
Exactly. Hosting this whole underground party. Some studies have found up to 15 other species in one burrow.
15. Seriously.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's crazy. So they're not just surviving on their own, they're actually helping all these other creatures survive too.
Absolutely. It really shows you how connected everything is in the desert. Like, the tortoise plays a vital role in keeping that whole system going.
Yeah, it's amazing how everything works together out there.
Right. It's fascinating.
It is. It really is. But unfortunately, it's not all sunshine and roses for our tough little landlord.
Yeah.
There's some serious challenges they're facing.
Unfortunately, that's true. Being tough only gets you so far when you're up against things like, well, humans.
Yeah, that's what we're going to be dipping into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll uncover all those challenges and the amazing people working to protect these tortoises. So stay tuned. All right, so we're back, and we're diving deeper into the world of the Sonoran Desert Tortoise. Before the break, we were talking about how these tortoises are like these amazing landlords of the desert,
Right. They really are. Providing shelter for all those other creatures.
Yeah, but as we kind of hinted at, it's not always easy being a tortoise these days.
Sadly, no.
Huh.
It's a tough world out there, especially for a species facing so many human-caused problems.
Yeah. So let's talk about those threats like habitat destruction. I know it's a big problem for so many animals these days. So how is that affecting our desert tortoises?
Oh, it's a huge issue. Like, think about urban sprawl.
Yeah.
Agriculture, all that development, it's all pushing into their territory. It's like if you imagine a highway cutting right through their home.
Right.
It just chops up the landscape, separates populations, makes it harder for them to find food and water.
Yeah, like it's shrinking their world little by little.
Exactly. Less space, more competition for everything, the cacti they eat, the places they dig their burrows,
Just they're constantly being squeezed. And then on top of that, I was reading about invasive species too. How do those play into this?
Oh, you're probably thinking about buffalo grass. It's nasty stuff.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
It's this, like, super aggressive grass that's not even from here.
Okay.
And it crowds out all the native plants that tortoises rely on for food. It's basically like swapping their grocery store for one that sells only junk food.
That's a good way to put it. So we're not just shrinking their home, but also replacing their food with, like, empty calories.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a double whammy.
And then, of course, there's climate change. I mean, how could we forget about that?
Right. It's the biggest threat of all, really. I mean, the Sonoran Desert is already, like, one of the hottest, driest places anywhere.
Yeah, and climate change is basically like cranking up the heat even more.
Exactly. More evaporation, less water, and those intense droughts are getting even worse, which is like a nightmare for a creature that's evolved to conserve every drop.
It's like, how much can they adapt,
Right. And that's what scientists are trying to figure out. It's a race against time.
This is all making those burrows sound even more important, not just to escape the heat, but like to escape all these pressures.
Totally. They're becoming more and more vital for survival.
Well, on a more positive note, I know there are people out there fighting for these tortoises. So what can be done to help them?
Well, there's a lot of great work being done. For one, protecting their habitat is key.
Okay, how does that work?
It's about creating these safe zones, like national parks and wildlife refuges.
Right.
Places where development's off limits and tortoises can, do their thing in peace.
So kind of like giving them room to breathe.
Exactly. And then there's habitat restoration, too. That's all about going in and fixing the damage we've already done.
Oh, interesting. How do they do that?
Like, they remove that nasty buffalo grass and plant native stuff that tortoises actually like to eat.
So rebuilding their grocery store, basically.
Yep. It's tough work, but when you see those native plants coming back and the tortoises starting to use those areas again, it's really rewarding.
That's awesome. But habitat protection and restoration can only go so far, right? Especially with, climate change being such a massive problem.
That's true. We need all hands on deck.
Yeah.
Research is super important.
Okay, what kind of research?
Like, they're studying tortoise genetics, diseases, movement patterns, all that, to figure out how best to protect them.
So the more we understand them, the better we can help them.
Exactly. And then there's public education. It's huge.
Right, because people need to know about this stuff.
Right. A lot of folks just aren't aware of these tortoises or what they're going through.
Yeah, I get that. So what can, regular people do to help? Like, what can I do?
Well, first off, Just be respectful when you're out in their territory.
Yeah. Okay.
Stick to the trails. Don't mess with their burrows.
Right.
And watch out for that buffalo grass. Make sure you clean your clothes and gear after being out there so you don't spread those seeds around.
It's all about being a good guest, basically.
Exactly. And, you can volunteer for buffalo grass removal events, too.
Yeah.
Those are always happening.
Oh, cool. I'll have to look into that. What about those organizations you mentioned?
Oh, yeah. Like there's the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum. They're doing amazing work.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
They're doing research, running breeding programs, educating the public.
That's great. Are there other groups doing similar work?
Oh, yeah. The Tucson Herpetological Society is another one. They rescue injured tortoises, do population monitoring, all that important stuff.
It's inspiring, to see so many people dedicating themselves to protecting these tortoises.
It really is. They're giving those tortoises a fighting chance.
And it's not just, like, scientists and researchers. Like,
At all.
it's a whole community effort.
Exactly. It takes all of us working together.
What about government agencies? Do they play a role in all of this?
Oh, absolutely. Agencies like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service
Okay.
and the Bureau of Land Management, they manage so much of the land where these tortoises live.
Right.
They create management plans, regulate development, make sure the tortoises are protected.
So they're like the stewards of the land, making sure everything stays in balance.
Pretty much. It's a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
It's really encouraging,
Yeah,
to see so much effort going into protecting the Sonoran Desert Tortoise.
definitely.
Gives me hope amidst all the, doom and gloom we hear about the environment.
It really shows how much we can achieve when we all work together.
And it really highlights how, connected everything is.
Exactly. The tortoise's fate is tied to the fate of the whole desert, and ultimately our fate, too.
And that's a perfect segue into the next part of our deep dive. We've talked about how these tortoises survive, the problems they're up against, and what's being done to help them. But their story has a bigger message,
Oh, absolutely.
It's about more than just tortoises. It's about conservation on a global scale.
It's about understanding that everything is connected.
Right. So stick around, because that's what we'll be unpacking in the final part of our deep dive. All right, so we're back. And, our shells are kind of buzzing after learning about the Sonoran Desert Tortoise.
Yeah, they really are fascinating creatures, aren't they?
They are. But, their story, it's kind of a reflection of bigger things. It's not just about them.
Right. It's like their struggles are a tiny version of what's happening all over the planet.
Exactly. So, what do you think is the biggest lesson here?
Well, I think it shows us that conservation isn't just about saving the cute and cuddly animals,
Right.
the pandas and the elephants. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
It's about valuing every single species, even the ones that might seem, less exciting.
Right, like maybe a tortoise.
Yeah, exactly. Because every creature has a role to play.
And they're all connected, right?
Exactly. And their fate is connected to ours, too.
I like that. It's like, we got to stop thinking of ourselves as separate from nature. We're a part of it,
Absolutely. We're all in this together. Remember how those tortoises, their burrows, they don't just help them.
Yeah.
They help a whole bunch of other animals, too.
Yeah, like a whole little community down there.
Right. And that's kind of like us and ecosystems.
Okay.
We need healthy ecosystems to survive. Clean air, clean water, all that.
So it all comes back to us in the end, huh?
It always does, like a big circle.
Okay, so big question then. Knowing all this, what can we even do? It seems so overwhelming.
I know, it can feel that way. But even little things can make a difference.
Like what?
Like supporting those organizations we were talking about.
Yeah.
Volunteer, donate, just spread the word.
Okay.
And then there's the stuff we do every day. Think about what you're buying. Try to reduce your waste.
Right, make conscious choices.
Exactly. Every little bit helps.
It's like we have to go from feeling helpless to feeling empowered. We can actually do something.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
We all have the power to make a difference.
I love that.
Yeah. And the tortoise, it's like a symbol,
What?
resilience.
Yeah.
But it's also a wake-up call. Hey, we got to take care of this planet. For them and for ourselves.
Wow, that's powerful. Man, this deep dive has been really amazing. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too.
It's been a journey for sure. From the desert to the whole planet.
Yeah, it's all connected.
And I feel like I'm walking away with, I don't know, a sense of responsibility,
I think that's the best takeaway, really.
It is. Well, to everyone listening, we hope you learned something awesome today, too.
Yeah, keep learning.
Keep exploring.
Keep asking questions.
And, maybe think about what you can do